Welcome to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.
What are auras? Can they really be read? If so, can they actually tell you about a person's health, state of mind, or something else?
Welcome to the 465th edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. I'm Ben, and those questions came from my co-host and partner in the paranormal, my dad. And if those questions led you to believe that we'll be talking about auras this evening, then you're absolutely correct.
Well, our guest this evening is Susan Sheppard, one of the most sensible psychic mediums we know. She's also a paranormal researcher, the author of 4 books and many articles, a media personality, and is the creator of the Haunted Parkersburg, that's in West Virginia, ghost tours. We first met Susan 10 years ago, if that's possible, when she invited me to speak at the Haunted West Virginia Ghost and Paranormal Conference in the lovely town of Parkersburg in the Ohio Valley in the heart of Mothman country. Ben was 11. And we've been friends ever since. Susan has also cajoled
me. Me and Dad have been friends ever since.
Yeah. All right, watch your sentence structure. Susan also cajoled me into leading a ghost hunt at that time, something I had never done before, but it turned out to be pretty interesting. Anyway, contact her at Sheppard@wirefire.com. Sheppard is Sheppard. That's real tricky. Okay.
Indeed, it is. So, Susan Sheppard, welcome back to Behind the Paranormal.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm so happy to be back. It's nice talking with you again. 10 years.
It's been too long.
Long time.
It's been too long. Alrighty, so let's get right into the questions for this evening. So, is an aura the same as a bioelectric field that surrounds all living things, or is it something different?
Well, we don't really know. We don't know precisely what an aura is, what creates an aura. It seems to be an energy that radiates from living cells and acts as a layer from a protective energy field. People have been aware of auras for, thousands of years. Probably the most common representation of an aura would be in halos, where artists back in the medieval times and the Renaissance would put halos over saints and religious figures. And it was believed that some artists could have a sensitivity to see those. And those halos represented a holiness or a purity, spiritual, or some kind of a radiant energy. So they think the aura is kind of a luminous energy body that is, of course, not part of the physical body, but a different type of body. Some of it call it a bioplasmic body. So there's different things. I mean, from other, philosophies, they might call it the pranic field or chi, such as the Japanese form of Reiki. But it's basically pretty much an energy body, a spirit body, probably an electrical body that we are all able to see at certain times.
Alrighty, so is it through this field that people can read each other? Or in other words, if my aura is close enough to touch someone else's, can I read their feelings and intentions?
Well, I'll tell you, looking at it as an energy field, a lot of the books say that it extends about 2 to 3 feet outside of the body, the human body. I personally believe that it extends much further than that, and I can tell you later why I think that is. But, yeah, it could be a reading or an exchange. We carry things in our aura. Some people can create, like, attachments. For instance, if you would go on a ghost hunt, for instance, you might pick up some kind of a spirit attachment and carry that in your aura. And, a psychic would be able to see that. Not always just a psychic, though, because we've had classes here in Parkersburg where we can teach everybody to see an aura. Not everyone can see the colors in the aura, but most people can see the glow from the aura. And all living things have an aura, and even inanimate objects have an aura. But the aura on the inanimate objects is much, much smaller. It might be like 2 inches, and it's usually a kind of a dingy, dingy like brown color. So, as with everything in the paranormal, it's unexplained. That's why it's paranormal.
Well, we always say, in our personal opinion, the paranormal is easy to explain. It's the explanations that are difficult to grasp.
Well, you sort of answered the next question, Susan, with some people say they can see auras, but you mentioned that you teach classes on how to see auras. So how do you teach someone to do that?
Well, I'll tell you, if you're just a regular person, it's a little hard to explain, but, I think as children, lying in bed at night, looking out into the dark, you can see these different shapes of green and purple and blue and things like that. I don't know if you remember that. Maybe I only saw that. The best
I know
what
you're talking about.
Pardon me?
No, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. That's kind of what they look like. The best place to see an aura, I think, is in a theater before they turn, before the movie comes on, when they turn the lights down. You can actually see the colors and the lights around people's heads. And it's really very interesting to watch because the auras will basically, they will surge, they will change, they will kind of surge into each other, and they are always moving. It's not a solid thing at all. So if you want to try seeing auras, that's the best place to start. Usually with our students here in some of our psychic classes, we turn off the lights. Usually it's best to have like either a solid, solid color. Usually white, I think, is best. But I think in front of a blackboard, you could probably do it in front of a blackboard as well. And you kind of shift your focus. Usually when we're doing the aura reading, almost everyone can see the glowing light. Not everyone sees the colors. Males tend to not see auras as well as females do. And usually when they can't see the color, I'll tell them, to close their eyes and try to visualize the color. And then a lot of times they can sense it in that kind of a way.
All right, I'll tell you my interpretation, Susan. I don't know a lot about this, but I do tend to see them. It just shook me up one time when I was looking at somebody who was sitting against I guess it was a beige wall, light-colored wall, and I could see really a black aura. And the person died or translated, as we say, the following week, and they weren't even sick. Yeah, and
that's usually that's what I've never seen that I can remember a black aura, but
I never see it
what
again.
I've read.
Yeah,
exactly. No aura. So it will be either a black aura or no aura, and the person is about ready to die.
Oh, right.
So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well that happened to me then. I hope it doesn't happen again. But in any case, how I interpret, and you know me, Susan, I kind of have to try and explain things. I think what we're dealing with here is everything is electrical, and I'm a big one on there really not being people not being islands unto themselves. I don't think that our minds or our souls are even inside us in a totally individualistic sense. And I think this aura seems to be an electrical phenomenon. There is a DC, a direct current electrical field around every living thing and probably everything, period.
Right.
How it's generated, I'd like you to speculate. I don't know. But whatever it is, it does seem to connect us.
It could be the spirit. That might be,
what do you mean spirit? What is that?
It's the life force. It would have to be, the life force.
Animus,
the
as it's saying in Latin. Right.
Now, whether, you wonder after a person dies, whether that, it remains. And that's part of what the spirit is.
Same kind of critter.
Or it could be, the cells in the body that are actually, are like an electrical charge. So I don't have answers to that.
Well, that is a theory. Well, no one really does. That is a theory, though, that, Ben, what is it? The mitochondria, is it that create electrical charge? Yeah.
No. Crap. I can't remember my
neurology. You
studied
biology more than I did.
No, we talked a lot about neurology in one of my psych classes, and it wasn't because of that. There was some reason why. I don't remember what it is, though. I'll look it up.
Okay, thank you. We'll take a ring check.
And I have reason to believe. I had a phenomenon on the Ghost Tour for a number of years. I don't know if you've heard about this or you've ever discussed this, but have you heard of people walking under street lights and them going out? Have you heard of that phenomenon?
Going out in the sense of sort of disappearing from sight.
No, turning off.
Turning off.
You know, you walk under a light bulb turns off.
Oh, the bulb. Talking about the person turns. All right.
Yeah, the person just turns off.
More black auras. No, oh, yes, that happens to me all the time.
Me too. And basically what that is, it has gotten to the point, you know, early on in the ghost tour, I thought they were motion-sensitive lights, and I thought, no, they're supposed to come on. They're not supposed to go out.
Yeah.
So, and then the things would keep going out. We have like 6 and 8 of them going out a night, a street light. I thought, I must be Dracula.
Well, around here, in Northern Rhode Island, they probably can't afford to pay for the lights, so that's why they go.
It gave me a little bit of a complex.
Yeah.
What it is the street light is interpreting psychic energy as sunlight. So when the psychic person or the psychic energy, and it will build, you know, as the ghost tour builds, it gets worse and worse, you know. And it even got to the point where a lot of times it's hilarious because it will even, if I point at something, a street light will go out 2 blocks away. That is how far that energy field will reach. One night I was really bad. We had the one place where Houdini, the one theater where Houdini once played, and this was a private ghost tour, and it was terrible. I had this little boy convinced that Houdini was walking around making the street lights go out.
Oh dear!
And you know, they just went out, you know, all evening, and the little boy finally said to his mother, "Hey, I'm really starting to believe in this stuff right now." But I mean, you know, this has been witnessed by, you know, hundreds of people. So I think it's the electrical body, and I think some people have more psychic energy than other people, and I don't know what the explanation of that is. I also know that I tend to shock people when I touch them a lot, you know.
Yes.
And my mother was one of those kind of people that watches wouldn't run. They wouldn't run for very long.
That's me.
So it could be even some hereditary thing. I think it probably comes from the brain. So we go into the brain and we think about what is the brain, and then we think of the mind, and the mind is something different than the brain.
That's right.
So if any of that makes sense.
Oh no, it does. It does. But this whole electrical thing is bizarre because I cannot wear any jewelry. I can't wear a watch. I can't even wear my wedding band because I get rashes and strange things happen. So it's very annoying. And I think that all this has to do with the electricity that is around us and in us, and that ultimately holds the whole thing together, the multiverse together. What do you think of this? Because you just made me think of an incident that occurred. I was on an investigation. This is 1998. It's before Ben was even able to join me in these cases.
I was approximately 6.
Yes, yeah, a little too young for this. So I was investigating a case in New England here, and I had gone into the house, and these things tend to, maybe they pick up my aura coming, as they just don't like me. They'll leave half the time.
Right.
And this particular entity was what we refer to as a parasite. You heard my lecture,
right?
So you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
And there was nothing in the house, but I went out in the yard, which I always do. I always check the whole area, and I felt that electrical field. And that's what I think these things generate, or at least they either generated, or it's generated by something that permits them to enter our world to some degree, and vice versa. And I walked down towards the center of this field, and I saw this entity. And it was, and I've seen them often like this, and they look almost like they look like plasma, which is really just
electrified air molecules.
And this thing kind of went, whoa, and it took off, because, you know, they're more afraid of you than you are of them when you have their number.
That's true, exactly.
And I tried to follow it, but of course I couldn't. Where or when it went, I don't know, because it seemed to be coming back and forth across several worlds. I don't know, but it's, again, all electrical. So would you say I was seeing its aura? Because I know these are physical beings most of the time, because I've had physical altercations with them. But as they manifest in our world, do you think that was what might be equivalent to its aura that I was seeing?
I would think so. It could be some type of an entity. It could be a person who's died.
Well, this was a parasite, I believe, and I don't think it was human.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right.
Yeah, so.
It probably was. But, those things are just kind of unexplained, and you have a special gift of seeing those.
Well, I don't know what's a gift.
Maybe you don't want that gift, but, they will tap in. If you're talking about an attachment, they will attach just like a parasite. And it's an amazing thing, because a lot of times we were doing the classes and we were, shutting off the lights and looking at different people's auras. A lot of the ghost hunters did have attachments where they had picked up things and when we had a woman there that does Reiki, and she got rid of them. I mean, she's great at it. And they hadn't noticed anything, but you wonder if you get a headache or you feel dizzy or you're not kind of feeling up to par. You wonder if they're not, attaching to that and kind of sucking off of you.
Well, that's the thing.
And they do.
Do you remember? I'm thinking back to 2003 and when I was at the conference that you ran there. It was a wonderful experience. And Ben's mom came, which is the only conference she's ever attended. We don't attend that many, but she came. And the first thing she did was grab my arm, take me out of the hall, and say, "Some of these people brought things with them."
Right.
That's a quote. And when a picture was taken of me giving one of my talks, there were all sorts of weird electrical effects in the picture. Right. So, and that happens to me a lot, and probably to you too. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you have some type of psychic ability on your own, whether whether you develop it, of course, as a researcher, and you develop it as a ghost hunter and a paranormal investigator. Another person might develop it in a way that they could do readings for other people. Read things. So, and definitely when people do have that kind of high magnetic types of energies, those things will latch on and they can appear much easier. And I know that, a lot of the groups, if they go on ghost hunts, you usually have better results if you have somebody that's got a little bit of, psychic medium abilities, and they tend to get better pictures around me and pick up EVPs a little better around me, and I just sort of a conduit, really. That's what you are. I mean, so I hope that answers that.
Oh, sure. No, it's funny. I'm looking back to my early days, and gosh, you wouldn't be caught dead with a psychic in those days. But now, I guess they're kind of working with some of these groups, I suppose. I think a lot of people think they're psychic, and they really aren't. I mean, there are delusional people, lots
kind
of them.
Crazy people. Then there are fraudulent people. Yeah. Then there are psychics that may have had it as a young person, but then they begin to look at it as something to make money or get famous on, and then it sort of goes away. I mean, I could talk about some famous psychics in that way. I don't want to get sued, but and also it's something really hard to keep up. Being psychic is not like learning to play the piano or learning something and just sitting down and doing it. I mean, it's with you at sometimes stronger than other times. A lot of times there'll be people that you can't read, situations you can't read, and then other people it's kind of bam. I have a friend in Denmark, and I was doing a reading for her, and she was wanting me to tell her about this certain person, and all of a sudden, I didn't really want to do a reading at all, and all of a sudden I began to smell soap suds, and I thought, so then I had the hook there. The person, I smelled like an Irish Spring like soap, and then, I'm off and running. I could read the whole thing. So, it's just one of those things. It's very hard to label. It's very hard to measure. And then you have detractors that aren't going to believe it no matter what. So,
well, the thing is that it is well established in mainstream science that this electrical field exists. What you call it is up to you, I guess, and what it might do is, I suppose, up for debate. But there's no question that it exists, which is, of course, what made me take it seriously. How do you and I assume that you do this in your own work. How do you read these auras? If you do, I'm
well,
sure you do.
I mean, to be honest with you, I think what I'm doing is I'm sensing them, because, I'm reading a woman in Denmark, so I can't see her aura.
Yeah.
So, But I can see my own. I mean, some.
Well, I was going to ask you that,
you
too. Can you see your own?
Oh, yeah. I could see it in the mirror. I mean, I know exactly what color. I've seen it for years. I mean, some days I don't see it, and I'm not ever looking for it, but sometimes I'll look in a mirror and I'll see it. It's usually a deep, like, turquoise color. And then, of course, you get, with a lot of people that study the aura, and, there's different meanings to the colors. I'm not sure that it's exact. Well, the turquoise color supposedly is linked to the throat chakra, so that would be somebody who would speak or who would write, that sort of thing.
Okay.
And then the different colors, are, I'm not an expert in chakras, but if the aura is a certain color, it would have it would resonate with a certain chakra, on the body. Now, that's nothing proven. I mean, that's a belief. If it would be violet, it would be something, very highly spiritual, be inspiration, and, in the stomach area that would be yellow, and that would be sort of gut reactions to things. So, there's that part of it, too.
In your initial remarks, you brought up something I had thought of, too, and that's the nimbus, as it's or halo around in the art of not just Christianity but others as well.
Even in some cave paintings, it has those.
Sometimes those are interpreted as alien space helmets or something.
Right.
But you're right.
You can interpret anything as anything, really.
Yeah, you can, but in iconography, certainly this is a something you see constantly, and it's amazing. It's funny. There's I think of the Orthodox icon of the Nativity of Christ, the birth of Christ.
Right.
Everybody's got a halo except one person in that. And it's got animals in it and everything else. And the animals don't have halos, but all the people do except one. And St. Joseph, it's interesting. St. Joseph is sitting down below the stable with his head in his hands. And this one without the nimbus, without the halo, is whispering in his ear in this icon.
Yeah, the old man in the grass.
The old man in the grass.
And
I asked about that one time, and they said, that's the devil whispering to St. Joseph, how can a virgin have a child?
Oh, yeah, I do remember. I remember being taught that in church school.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
So I said, that's very interesting. So the devil is in an icon, but it didn't have a halo.
Right.
But there must have been an awareness in the ancient world, and we're always saying this, that from the remote past, there were...
ancestors weren't stupid. I mean, we wouldn't be alive now if they were stupid.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So these are things I think that we are rediscovering because our immediate ancestors lost all this to their intellectualizing, and many of these new things are coming back, and perhaps one of the most obvious things are maybe auras, because, as you say, a lot of people can see them. Well, what say you?
I think anybody can be taught to see them. I really do. Maybe, like I said, maybe not so much in the colors, but they can see the energy field, they can see the force field.
Well, it matters if they want to.
Right. And, another, you talk about a person on a stage, for instance, who's given a lecture, if they're standing in front of a blank wall, that's another really easy place to see them. But, it's funny you're talking about, and this may not have anything to do with it, but, Leonardo da Vinci was constantly getting in trouble because of that.
Really?
he would refuse to paint auras, and then they would send the paintings back. He would be forced.
I didn't know that.
Be forced to he would refuse to paint auras, and then the church was, that's how he made his living, was religious paintings. But he was not a religious man at all. So they would send it back, and he'd have to paint the auras, or he'd do a whole new painting. He'd do one painting without the auras, and the other painting with auras.
Well, he didn't mind taking their money.
So that's kind of a funny thing.
Well, anyway, we're going to take a commercial break. You're listening to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno on WOON 1240 AM in New England's beautiful Blackstone River Valley, and our wonderful guest, Susan Sheppard, and our subject, auras. We'll be right back.
Lou Mandeville here to tell you the only place to get your local high school and college scores, as well as the Pats, Bruins, Celtics, and Sox, is on My Morning Sports Reports. And they are right here on ON 1240, Monday through Friday on the Morning Fun Show.
Okay, and we wanted to tell you about a couple of the charities Ben and I have embraced recently. And you can find out all the charities that we endorse certainly on our websites, newenglandghosts.com and behindtheparanormal.com. But two in particular I wanted to bring to your attention. USA Cares, which is trying to get established on the East Coast. It's a wonderful charity that provides financial and advocacy assistance to post-9/11 active duty U.S. military personnel, veterans, and their families. And they provide financial assistance in the sense that if somebody can't pay their mortgage that month, out goes a check. It's as simple as that. And they're trying to start a chapter in Rhode Island here, and we'd like to help them with that. So please, drop me a line at paul@behindtheparanormal.com or call 401-527-5345 if you'd like to help out with that. We need 6 or 7 people to do that and see if we can't get that going. Also, for our Canadian listeners, Canadian Veterans Advocacy is a wonderful group started by Mike Blaze in Ontario, and he has done a tremendous job of building up a very aware kind of group for Canadian veterans, who, as you know, have been our comrades in arms throughout the War on Terror and have given many lives in the Canadian military to that cause. And CanadianVeteransAdvocacy.org, check them out as well. Terrific group. And while we're at that, we wanted to express our sympathy and our prayers for the people in Lac Mégantic, Quebec, because I used to know people there, and it's a great one. It's a wonderful town, wonderful place to visit. The lake is beautiful, and this terrible oil train accident was just awful yesterday. And we wish them quick recovery from that, and we hope that the missing people are found unhurt. So again, our prayers for them. So let's get back to our show, and we are very pleased to have with us Susan Sheppard, an old friend of ours, who was a lot of people say I'm not too happy with the old part, but anyway, I'm getting there. But wonderful psychic medium, and one of the few we trust, a paranormal investigator, a fine author, excellent books, which she'll have a chance to tell you about in a few minutes. And we're talking about the subject of auras tonight, something that is often considered pseudoscience, but as one who does not respect pseudoscience, I respect the aura thing, because it is well known that there are electrical fields around our bodies, and that they may or may not, they probably, almost certainly interact with other people's, and that's how we know a lot of stuff. And people in Susan's field have found out how to use that for many years, and anyway, that's what we're talking about this evening. But before we go on, and before we run out of time, I wanted to ask Susan to tell us about her website, her books, and her activities, what she's working on, and where you can find out more about her.
Well, I just made a movie. I wrote a movie.
Okay. So did we.
Tell you about that?
Okay. Tell us about that.
Okay. Readapted the old movie White Zombie. I wrote this a few years ago, actually for Scarlett. Scarlett, my daughter, is at Columbia College in Chicago. She's now an actress. She
last time I saw her, she was like 10.
Virginia. Yeah, she's living in Chicago. So what I did was I readapted the old movie, but I've added 60% new material. And we just wrapped that movie about a month ago. We filmed it here in the area, and it is gorgeous.
Well done.
It's not going to look like anything you have ever seen before. We have Baron Samedi, which is the guardian of cemeteries, and we have Mambos and real voodoo stuff that the original movie didn't really have.
Interesting.
So it's going to be a fascinating thing, and it's going to come out in 2014. Hannah Parkersburg website will be doing the ghost tours this fall, and just working on a lot of different things, but just wrapped up a movie.
Very good. Well, we'll look forward to hearing more about that, and keep us posted. Okay, so let's get back to our subject. Actually, tell us about your books too, because they're very interesting. Because there are 4 of them at last I looked.
Well, I'm trying to finish a couple more.
Aren't we all?
I have a book on ghosts and spirits, that I'm working on. But Astrological Guide to Seduction and Romance, that is not my title. That's the title the publisher gave. Cry of the Banshee, which is tales of West Virginia and Ohio Valley hauntings. We have the West Virginia Mothman in that. We also have a long section on Indrid Cold, which ties in with the West Virginia Mothman. I just did a show on the Travel Channel, Mysteries at the Museum, on the Indrid Cold tapes, which has to do with an alien being that visited Parkersburg back in 1966, plays a big part of the Mothman Prophecies movie. So I was on the Travel Channel for that. It's got, paranormal, men in black, ghosts, hauntings, spirits, you name it.
Pretty complete.
So,
okay.
And then I also have my deck called the Phoenix card, so I have a number of things.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Okay, well, we have, on the subject of auras here, we've been talking about auras generated by people or whatever they may be, but there were also auras generated by so-called inanimate objects. I don't think there are any such thing. I think it's all part of the biosphere. But how would is there any speculation on how they would be generated, say from a rock or
well, I suppose anything would have lived at one time, with some living thing at one time. But, if you look at them, if you want to practice doing the aura, if you want to look at like an inanimate object, like maybe something plastic even, it will have an aura. It won't be very big. It'll be about maybe 2 inches. It will be like a brownish color, grayish color, and it will usually only be one solid color, where most people's auras have a few different colors in them, and they will have bands of light and dark places and light places, and they move. They move, whereas in the inanimate object, they pretty well, they're pretty well stuck in one spot. So that's the difference. But I'm not a scientist, so I can't explain that.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. But there is a certain current of thought that I personally happen to agree with, that the auras are not separated from one another. Literally, they are all part of what is generated by the biosphere, the entire community of living things, or the entire community of things. And
right.
That's how we communicate. That's how we're able to explain many of the things, or try to explain, that occur in quantum mechanics. For example, particles communicating with one another across vast distances of space, or being able to travel vast distances without traversing the space in between, things like that. Perhaps right. Explainable in some way by the same force that is behind auras. So I don't know.
Right. I think you're probably right. And, how solid are we in our bodies even? I mean, that's a question, too.
Well, that's exactly right, yeah.
So, I think that's a good explanation, especially people being open and sensitive to, and you're probably right, too, the psychic or the medium sensing the other people's aura and kind of reading the blueprint in that aura, even though they may not be able to, visually see it at certain times. Like, in the daylight, or sitting across the table, in a room where there's different objects, you couldn't see it as well. But the explanation of reading people at a long distance, that would be something different. But
not if it's a unified system.
I think that that's the way it is with spirits coming back too. I think that they they're just right here whenever there's a memory.
Oh, we're right there. Or both.
They're there. It's instant.
Yeah.
And there's no walking through walls or anything like that at all.
Yeah, well, supposedly some people can do that, but in any case, the whole...
There are claims of that.
If you were to... suppose you had the experience I have. Now, you can see auras.
Right.
Now, first, the preliminary question would be, do you see them routinely? In other words, you walk down the street in lovely Parkersburg, and do you see auras around people, and you have to try?
If I'm sitting in a movie theater, I will see them very easily.
Okay.
I will sit there and I will watch people's auras interact.
That must be very distracting.
In them. Or if I'm watching a person on a stage, or a minister giving a sermon, where a person is kind of solidly in one spot, maybe there's nothing really behind them. You know what I mean? There's no pattern or anything. If there's a pattern behind something, you're not likely going to see the aura. It's just too delicate to see. They're not they're not like a solid thing. It's not like they don't look like the Virgin of Guadalupe, for instance. The lights around her.
That's interesting because that's another thing. There's a glow around that particular rendition of Our Lady of Guadalupe, and a number of other people too. And I'm thinking particularly of Hindu holy people who are depicted in religious art. You often see first of all their skin is blue,
right,
which is a symbol of immortality, and very often there's a glow around their whole body, which I always found very interesting. Mm-hmm. There is a famous ghost in Newport here in Rhode Island, and I was doing a Travel Channel thing many years ago. And there was a question from the producer who, by the way, was disgusted because I wasn't giving her campfire ghost stories. I was trying to give her as much science as you can get. And she said, well, why is this ghost seen like glowing? 'Cause she died in a fire, and everybody thinks, well, that's because she died in a fire. She's on fire.
Right.
But you get hit by a car, you make car sounds everywhere you go.
But very often you do see these car sounds. You do see these things, these glows around many of these figures. And I said, well, my interpretation is just you're seeing them across the boundaries of a world, which is essentially electromagnetism that hold the worlds together, and it's plasma, so it's going to look like it's glowing. And
then she kicked you off the set for not
exactly. We were filming in a cemetery, and she just seemed disgusted that I was.
Well, I have a feeling they're a little bit more sophisticated now, about these kinds of things too. That's a kind of a bad experience to have when you're the person who's interviewing you is a skeptic and thinks you're lying or something.
Which is ironic because it's irony, a lot of irony all into one.
But my question is,
it reminded me of we're talking about this in a religious way. If you go into the Gnostic Gospels, when they talk about certain parts of Christ, whether you believe in them or not, I don't know. But
I find them very interesting.
Some of the interesting things are they said Christ could travel as an apparition. Sometimes he would show himself to people as a little child. Other times he would show himself to people as an old man. So, it's also a projection kind of thing. Whatever.
Well, at Nicaea in 325 A.D., when they put the Bible together as we know it today, first of all, St. Paul's version of Christianity had long since taken over. And there were many other versions of it. But what they were concerned with, as I heard tell, was making sure that Christ was understood as fully God and fully man, whatever that may mean.
Right.
And the physicality was very important. So they stressed, they put in Gospels and that sort of thing that really stressed that, such as Thomas didn't believe, so here, put your hand on my side, I'm not a ghost, and all this sort of thing. Whereas the Gnostics were more, I suppose, spiritualistic, for lack of a better term, and so it was doctrinal was the reason, really. But there were many groups that accepted those Gospels and every various points of view that they said. As a matter of fact, there were long studies of people like Origen and the Lactantius, who you're going to get me going on church history here. I'll never stop. But in any case, there are reasons why that was in there. But what I wanted to ask you, Susan, was as one who can read auras, and what exactly is it you're reading? Is it the state of health? Is it the state of spirituality? State of mind?
The state of health is truly one of the main things people will read in an aura. There are some colors, for instance, that will be in the aura that will indicate health problems. You rarely see a red aura. I've never really can't remember ever seeing a really red type aura.
I've seen a few of those.
The red aura, can mean anger, but it can also mean, chronic pain. A gray, drab aura would be a poor state of health.
Anything else
the black
out of
aura that
auras?
you're talking about. So and you can see cracks in the aura and like fissures, and where the energy is kind of like spilling out. For instance, if a person has spots and cracks and holes in the aura, a lot of times they will be very fatigued, very drained. Their energy is very loose. So the health thing is a big thing with auras. The second thing would be, but I don't know if this part is true. So they will, another way to read the auras is you interpret the person's talents and abilities and by the color of the aura. I will tell you that mine is absolutely accurate. I was just looking at it right here. I had the colors right here. Turquoise, and here's it relates to sensitive, compassionate healer therapist. So it does sort of relate to me. But so the different auras, green aura would relate to like a more of a down to earth kind of person, a healer, and then that relates to the heart and lungs. But there's no proof of this, so I hesitate to say, well, it definitely means this or that, whether it's yellow and has to do with the kidneys. But that that's another way that they will read them as interpreting the way the healthiness of the aura, the clarity, the pureness of the colors, whether they have cracks or holes, and that sort of thing.
What if you had been, I know this is strictly theoretical, what if you had been in my position seeing that black aura? Or suppose you see one that is not so good. How should people react when they see that? Should they tell the person?
The best. I mean, honestly, sometimes you know these things, and there's not really a whole lot you can do about them. So the only thing I would suggest is just say a little prayer and hope for the best. It's all you can do.
Well, what if someone has asked you to read theirs and...
Wow.
And...
Well, let me put it to you this way. I've never read a person with a black aura.
That's good.
I don't think that I've read anyone who, that I can remember that, passed away suddenly. I've read older people and, people that have passed on, but usually, it's a few years later. So, you just, if you're reading somebody, you're sensing ill health, or maybe you're sensing a tragedy. You let them know in a very gentle kind of way, to get this checked out or that checked out, and then you just hope for the best.
Can you see auras around animals?
Oh, of course. Yeah, there's auras around animals.
Okay. Are there differences?
They're very similar to people.
Okay.
They're not quite as they don't reach out quite as far, but yeah, they're very similar to the auras on human beings.
Okay. Well, how often do you do this?
How often do I do aura reading? Usually when I'm teaching class.
Yeah.
I
in the theater.
I don't rely upon it for psychic reading. If I was doing a ghost hunt, in a darkened building like an old asylum or a hospital, I would be able to see, these plasma-like shapes, and and I would follow up on that.
Yeah.
If I looked into a room and I saw a lot of those plasma-like things kind of surging around, that would definitely be a room I would want to take pictures in, or do some recordings in.
Is that what comes out in photographs?
No, I've never seen. Not usually.
Because I often get plasmic effects.
What you see, and what comes out in photographs is very different.
Yeah,
I've found.
Huh. No. I found that sometimes, but not other times. I mean, there were things that
usually when I've never, some of the apparitions that I've seen in my life have looked absolutely solid and real. And I've yet to get something like that in a photograph.
Well, the thing I described earlier as, walking down into the middle of that electrical field and seeing this thing with arms and stuff and running away, I later got it in a picture. It was the same thing. Because my impression was there were two parasites operating here. One was dominating the other, which is something you see frequently, at least in my opinion, in my experience.
And that's a shame, too, because you wonder how many people have illnesses and mental problems and things that they're, that's something that's going on.
Yeah, well,
that's what Murray Silver brought up, that that these entities attached to him were causing him all these horrible ailments and like strange cravings and things like that.
Well, to be honest with you, when I was younger, I used to have lots of headaches and chronic fatigue syndrome, that sort of thing. And I think being psychic was a part of that, and attachment.
We went into the chronic fatigue syndrome thing. It ran into that early on in parasite cases. Something was sucking the life out of him.
Right, yeah.
Out of the thing. And that's how
I'm much stronger now, though.
Oh, that's good. Well, you live and learn. Ben, let me ask you this. You have some experience with the shaman-type stuff. What do auras enter into their work at all?
I don't know. I really don't know.
You just do it. You don't think about it.
No, I don't think about it at all.
I need to tell you before I need to ask you about something. I got a picture, and this doesn't have to do with auras, but I'm going to ask you anyway, of a family picnic that went on into the evening. And some pictures were taken of some girls, teenage girls. There are two figures, and I'll send it to you. One of them looks like the devil. Okay.
Well, what does the devil look like?
Looks like the devil. Well, but the devil's not described. It's red. It's naked. It looks like it has horns. You can see the chest. You can see the legs. Everything. And I'm wondering, what is that?
The Manson family
it's not
on
the devil,
vacation.
because the devil's not described in the Bible. So
No,
what is that? How would you tell these people? I have a theory, but you go ahead.
Okay, well, just briefly, I think that very often these could be legitimate entities, but sometimes I think that...
All right, let's ask the basic questions here. How do we know it's not photoshopped?
That goes without saying. Yours.
No, these little girls. No, you're gonna have to see this. These
we'll check that out. Yeah,
scared, and it was just real recent.
All right.
And they were teens.
Well, I'll look forward to seeing that.
Yeah, I'm going to send it to you. It's just this. I thought they said they had an uncle that had committed suicide in April, and they wanted to know if that might be him. They thought maybe it kind of looked like him, but they sent me the picture and it didn't. I thought it was something, some type of a shapeshifter that was just maybe trying to scare them.
Well, anything is possible. One thing I've learned, and you and I have talked about this before, Susan, is that nothing in the paranormal is what it appears to be.
Yeah.
No.
We see it from our own very limited perspective and out of our very inadequate framework, and we assume that what we're seeing matches that framework, and it doesn't. It could be something way beyond our understanding and experience, and usually is. I think that there can be situations where we can project our own stereotypes onto entities, and they will respond very much like certain mimics in nature will do, because it's all part of nature. So what's your opinion on it?
Well, I do think it's something mimicking, and that's pretty much what I thought. And I thought it was done to maybe frighten these girls. When I first looked at it, it looked like when you take a picture and somebody kind of steps back and it's blurred. That was what I originally thought until I looked at it closer, and I kind of, compared it to the girls that were, standing beside of it by the picnic table, and it wasn't a repeat of shapes or anything. I've seen it before where, for instance, an image can be blurred and it's actually the person has moved, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But this was not. No, It wasn't. I'll send it to you. I just told them it was an amazing, paranormal picture and sent it off to some website, and it isn't likely ever going to happen again, and it probably isn't anything that wants to hurt them in any way. But if they're scared or something happens, to contact me. But it just seems like one of those one-in-a-lifetime kind of pictures.
Okay. Well, we'll look forward to seeing that.
I was just thinking that once-in-a-lifetime kind of picture.
It does.
Yeah. All right. What if I don't know, this might be our final question we'll have time for, but suppose people have been taught, or you've taught them, or they just know how to read their own auras, and they see an undesirable color. Okay. What can they do about that? Can you do anything to change it, to make your state better?
Well, you would find a Reiki healer could adjust that. We have a Reiki healer here in Parkersburg, and she's also part Native American, so she adds that into it. So she's doing two different kinds of things. She's doing the Reiki, and then she's doing the shamanistic kind of cleansing on the person, and it works. I mean, she gets rid of it right away.
Huh.
So if you had something, if you could see your own aura, if you saw something black or brown or gray or even dark red, anything that would disturb you, you would want to just find a Reiki healer or maybe a shaman. But I would look up a Reiki healer first.
Okay. I with the greatest respect to that tradition, and it is an ancient Chinese tradition, there has to be some sort of, I would think, inner transformation as well. Maybe that helps affect that. I don't know, but I think that people just coming in and fixing it, I've always found in my work, is what they expect, and in our society we kind of have a McDonald land approach.
Yeah,
and
it might be like anything. Like if it's something very chronic, you would have to do it over and over again. But if it was something that was on, easily healed or on its way to being healed, it probably won't come back.
Okay.
With a chronic condition, I don't know. That might be an indication of somebody with a chronic, psychological problem, or a chronic, physical problem, illness. Rosemary Guiley, our friend Rosemary, she tells me about, you've got those headaches, Susan, you've got those headaches. That's what all the mediums have,
Yeah.
And it's kind of a part of it. So I'm going to have them off and on probably for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Well, there you go. But what could you just explain what Reiki is for those who don't know?
Well, Reiki is based upon, and I'm not a Reiki healer, but it's actually relatively recent. It's under 50 years old, I think.
Yeah, R-E-I-K-I.
And it was a type of psychic healing that was developed by a Japanese man. I can't remember his name, but he uses different shamanistic techniques from China, from the Orient, having to do with pranic energy, chi energy. And how they do it, I can't tell you. Except they pull the what needs healed. They kind of pull it out of your body and release it is what they do.
Yeah, I have heard marvelous things about it actually.
But it's also kind of like laying on of the hands as well.
Yeah. Well, these things manifest in different ways in different cultures, but I think that the underlying energies and principles and such and realities are the same.
And you don't really even have to be a real spiritual person to do the Reiki. This woman, I'll tell you, she seemed like an ordinary person, and she didn't seem to be on a mountaintop or anything, and she's good. And it was an amazing thing to see. Because
just because you're spiritual doesn't mean to be
when
weird.
I thought of her as a Reiki healer, I was kind of skeptical because she just didn't seem to type, but she's very good.
Well, just because you're spiritual doesn't mean you have to be weird.
Well, I know.
That's true.
Well,
and actually, then before
she seems like an ordinary, down-to-earth kind of person, unlike me.
Well, or me. But before we leave you this evening, Susan, and thank you for a very interesting show, I wanted to get you on with the Indrid Cold recordings. We've never done that.
We're going to have to do that because that's what the Travel Channel did, and that's a very important part of the Mothman sightings, and it doesn't get covered very much.
And there is
but
a
I
local.
have those old recordings.
Well, that's it. And there is a local.
Maybe we can play them or something.
I think that would be great. There is a local connection here in Woonsocket, Rhode Island, because our dear friend Joe Ferrier, who had a show on this station for over 50 years, was a renowned 1960s UFO expert and publisher of Probe magazine. He was the first magazine, as far as I'm aware, to report the Indrid Cold events.
Right.
And he was a good friend of the family involved there. So I think people locally would be very interested in that. Well, Susan,
Woodrow Derenberger was the man's name.
Derenberger, yeah. And we had his daughter on the show one time, as a matter of fact. Oh, I think it was a CBS edition, but. Well, thank you, Susan. It's always wonderful to talk to you and informative, and thank you so much for a great show. And we'll be talking to you off there. We'll look forward to seeing that picture.
Indeed.
All right, I'll send it to you tonight.
Great. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Best to all our friends in Parkersburg.
I will. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, so many thanks to our producer, Ben himself, who, as you may notice, has returned to the show finally since the end of his summer class.
Yeah, I know. And, finally.
Yeah, that's it. He regrets not having to travel back and forth to Boston.
No, I don't.
Anyway, next week, July 15th, we'll welcome back our good friend Mac Maloney for a continuation of our discussion of weird areas around the world that are like or even crazier than the renowned Area 51. There was too much. We're going to try and repeat some of the stuff we said on our CBS edition because there was so much weird stuff that happened during that broadcast, as is often the case when we talk about that. Right. So get your questions in now. Paul at BehindTheParanormal.com, or use the question form at our show site, BehindTheParanormal.com.
And on the CBS edition of the show on Sunday, July 14th in Boston, Pittsburgh, Detroit, /Windsor, and Seattle, Vancouver. And on radio.com, we will be back with the great Nick Redfern for a discussion of strange creatures, the classified documents.
That's going to be interesting.
Indeed it will.
So we leave you this evening with a thought from some unknown sage. A careless word may kindle strife, a cruel word may wreck a life, a timely word may level stress, but a loving word may heal and bless. I'm Paul Eno.
And I'm Ben Eno, and thanks for joining us on our great cosmic journey, and we shall see you next time.
Return to this radio frequency 167 hours from now for another edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.